This is about my grandson, a beautiful 12-year-old boy with the kindest heart you'll ever find, and the woman I thought was taking care of him while my son worked himself to the bone. I'm 64 years old. I've seen a lot in my life, but nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what I discovered when I finally paid attention to the fear in my grandson's eyes. My name is Eleanor. I've lived in Portland, Oregon for 42 years. My husband Robert and I raised our son David here, in a modest Cape Cod house with a garden I still tend every spring. Robert passed away 5 years ago from a heart attack. Sudden. He was only 63. One day we were planning a trip to see the Oregon coast, and the next day he was gone. The grief nearly broke me, but David helped me through it. He'd come over every Sunday with his wife Jennifer and their son Tommy, and we'd have dinner together. Those dinners kept me going. Tommy is special. He was diagnosed with autism when he was 3. He's high-functioning, but he struggles with social situations and needs routine, structure, patience. Robert and I adored that boy. Still do. Before Robert died, he made sure to set up a trust fund for Tommy. $300,000. Money Robert had saved and invested carefully over the years. He wanted Tommy to have security, to have options for whatever care or support he might need in the future. The trust was meant for Tommy's education, therapy, medical needs, and eventually to help him live independently if possible. Jennifer was named as trustee. At the time, it made sense. David worked long hours as a civil engineer, often traveling for projects. Jennifer was a stay-at-home mom, managing Tommy's therapy appointments, his school IEP meetings, everything. She seemed devoted. I remember Robert saying, "Jenny's a good mother. She'll make sure Tommy's taken care of." I agreed. Back then I really did. For the first 3 years after Robert died, everything seemed fine. Normal. I'd visit twice a week, sometimes more. I'd take Tommy to the park, help him with his homework, read to him. He loved books about space and dinosaurs. Jennifer always seemed grateful for the help. She'd hug me, say things like, "I don't know what we'd do without you, Eleanor." David would kiss her forehead and say, "I married the right woman." But about 8 months ago, things started to change. It was small at first. Little things I told myself I was imagining. Jennifer started asking questions about the trust fund. Specific questions. How exactly does the disbursement work? Can we access it for home improvements since Tommy lives here? What if we needed a larger amount for specialized therapy? I'd explain that the trust documents were clear. Money could only be used for Tommy's direct benefit. Medical care, education, therapy, equipment he needed. Not home renovations, not family vacations, not general household expenses. She'd smile and say, "Of course I know. I just want to make sure we're maximizing every opportunity for Tommy." But something in her eyes had changed, a hardness I hadn't noticed before. Then I started noticing the purchases. Jennifer showed up to Sunday dinner wearing a Cartier bracelet. I know jewelry. I sold estate jewelry for 15 years before I retired. That bracelet cost at least $8,000. When I complimented it, she laughed and said, "Oh, David surprised me for our anniversary." But their anniversary was in June. This was November. The next month, she had a new Louis Vuitton bag, then new designer shoes. Then I saw a brand new Audi parked in their driveway, a Q7, $70,000 at least. David drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic. When I asked about the car, Jennifer said breezily, "David got a bonus. We decided I deserved an upgrade." But here's the thing. I talked to my son. David tells me about work. He hadn't mentioned any bonus. In fact, he'd mentioned they were being careful with money because Tommy's therapy costs had increased. Something wasn't right. I started watching more carefully. And that's when I noticed how Tommy had changed. My grandson used to run to me when I arrived. He'd wrap his arms around my waist and launch into detailed explanations about whatever he was currently fascinated by: black holes, velociraptors, the Mars rover. His eyes would light up, and even though his speech was sometimes halting, his enthusiasm was infectious. But now, Tommy barely looked at me when I arrived. He'd offer a quiet "Hi, Grandma," and retreat to his room. His shoulders were hunched. He'd lost weight. When I asked Jennifer about it, she'd wave her hand dismissively. "Oh, he's going through a phase. Preteen stuff. You know how kids are." But I did know how kids are. And I knew my grandson. This wasn't a phase. This was fear. One afternoon in late January, I came over to babysit while Jennifer went to a doctor's appointment. Tommy and I were making cookies, his favorite activity. He loved measuring ingredients precisely. We were working in comfortable silence when he suddenly said, very quietly, "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart, anything." He kept his eyes on the mixing bowl. "Is it bad if someone makes you keep secrets from people you love?" My heart stopped. I put down the measuring cup and knelt beside him. "Tommy, what do you mean?" He bit his lip. A gesture so heartbreaking I wanted to cry. "I can't tell you. I promised I wouldn't tell anyone, especially not you or Daddy." "Who did you promise?" "Mommy. She said if I tell, something very bad will happen." I kept my voice gentle, calm, even though alarm bells were screaming in my head. "Tommy, if someone is making you keep a secret that makes you feel bad or scared, that's not a good secret. Good secrets are like surprise parties or presents. They make you feel excited and happy. Bad secrets make you feel worried or sad. Which kind is this?" His eyes filled with tears. "The bad kind. Can you tell me what the secret is? I promise I'll help you. Nothing bad will happen." He looked toward the hallway, as if checking that Jennifer wasn't there. Then he whispered, "Mommy takes me on trips, to a place that smells weird and has loud noises. She meets a man there. She makes me wait in a room alone for a long time. She says if I tell Daddy or you, she'll send me away to live with strangers. She says you and Daddy don't really want me anyway because I'm too much trouble." My blood ran cold. "Oh, Tommy, sweetheart, that is not true. Your Daddy and I love you more than anything in this world. We would never, ever send you away." But Mommy said, "Mommy is wrong, and what she's doing is not okay." He started crying then, really crying, and I held him until the tears stopped. I wanted to call David immediately. I wanted to call the police, but I forced myself to think clearly. If I acted on just Tommy's word, Jennifer could claim he was confused, that he'd misunderstood, that his autism made him mix up events. I'd seen enough court cases to know that without solid evidence, a mother's word often carried more weight than a child's account, especially a child with autism. I needed proof, and I needed to understand the full extent of what was happening. That evening, after Jennifer came home, I watched her carefully. She was distracted, checking her phone constantly. When David called to say he'd be late, her face lit up in a way that seemed wrong, too pleased, like she was happy her husband wouldn't be home. I told her I'd left my reading glasses there and would come by the next day to pick them up. She barely acknowledged me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Tommy's words, the trips, the man, the threats. And suddenly, something clicked. The expensive purchases. Jennifer's questions about the trust fund. Her increased irritability when I visited. What if she was stealing from Tommy's trust? The next morning, I called my attorney, Martin Ashford. He'd handled Robert's estate and the trust documents. I explained my concerns, carefully and factually. Martin was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Eleanor, as trustee, Jennifer is required to keep detailed records of all disbursements. She must provide annual accounting reports. Have you received those?" "No." "Should I?" "As Tommy's grandmother and contingent trustee, yes. You should have been copied on all annual statements. Let me make some calls." 3 hours later, Martin called back. His voice was tight. "Eleanor, we have a problem. Jennifer has withdrawn $147,000 from Tommy's trust over the past 18 months. I felt the room tilt. "What? For what?" The stated purposes range from educational therapy to specialized medical equipment to adaptive home modifications. But Eleanor, I called the therapy center Tommy attends. They bill insurance and you directly, correct? You pay the copays? Yes, I pay them. Jennifer never mentioned. Exactly. I also checked with the medical equipment suppliers in the area. None have orders under Tommy's name for anything more than his standard sensory items, which I know you purchase. There are no home modifications on record with the county permits office. Eleanor, I believe Jennifer has been embezzling from Tommy's trust. Oh my God. There's more. I did some checking. Jennifer opened a separate bank account 18 months ago. She's been depositing cashier's checks into it, amounts matching the withdrawals from Tommy's trust. That account has been drained multiple times, with large cash withdrawals at casinos. Casinos, the place that smells weird and has loud noises. She's been taking Tommy to casinos? It appears so. I found parking receipts and some security footage from an establishment called Silver Strike in Lincoln City. The footage shows a woman matching Jennifer's description with a young boy who appears to be Tommy. They're there every Thursday afternoon. Thursday afternoons. When Jennifer claimed she was taking Tommy to a specialized social skills group, I felt sick. What do I do? We need more evidence before we go to David or the authorities. If we move too fast, she'll claim the money went to legitimate expenses and produce fake receipts. We need to catch her in the act. Can you document anything? Do you have access to the house? I thought about my upcoming babysitting day. I watch Tommy every Wednesday. I have a key. Do you have a way to monitor what happens when you're not there? That's when I made the decision. I was 64 years old. I'd never broken a rule in my life. I paid my taxes on time. I always returned library books before the due date. I stopped completely at stop signs. But this was my grandson. This was his future, his security, his safety. I'll figure something out, I told Martin. The next day, I went to an electronics store. The young man who helped me was patient with my questions. I explained I wanted to keep an eye on my home while I was away. He set me up with 2 small cameras, the kind that look like phone chargers. They connected to an app on my phone and recorded to a cloud service. High-definition video and audio. On Wednesday, I arrived at David and Jennifer's house at 3 p.m. Jennifer was getting ready to leave for what she called a yoga class and some errands. She'd be gone until 6, she said. David wouldn't be home until 7. I hugged Tommy and watched Jennifer leave in her expensive Audi. Then I set up the cameras. One in the living room, positioned to capture the main area and kitchen. One in Tommy's bedroom, angled to show his homework desk and part of the hallway. I told myself I was doing this for Tommy, to protect him, to get the truth. I spent the afternoon with Tommy. We read together, we played his favorite board game about building space stations, we made dinner. He seemed lighter without Jennifer there, more like his old self. At one point, he hugged me and whispered, "I wish you could stay forever, Grandma." I wish I could too, sweetheart. When Jennifer came home at 6:15, she seemed agitated. Her pupils were dilated. She barely acknowledged me, just waved vaguely, and went upstairs. I heard her on the phone, her voice sharp. "I told you, I need more time. I'm handling it." I left at 6:30, my heart pounding. That night, I opened the camera app on my phone. The first hour of footage was uneventful. Jennifer came downstairs around 7:30. David came home at 7:45, exhausted. They had a brief conversation about dinner. Tommy was already in bed. Nothing remarkable. But then, at 9:30, after David had gone to bed early, Jennifer's phone rang. She answered immediately, her voice low. "I can't talk here." "Yes, I know I owe you. I said I'm working on it. The kid has another 150 in trust. I just need to move it carefully, because his grandmother is starting to ask questions. That's why." "No, David doesn't suspect anything. He's clueless." "Listen, I'll get you the money. I always do, don't I?" She paced while she talked, and I could see her face clearly. This wasn't the Jennifer I knew. Her expression was hard, calculating. When she finished the call, she poured herself a large glass of wine and muttered, "Stupid kid, and his stupid trust fund. Should have married someone without family baggage." I sat in my kitchen, my hands shaking, watching this woman I'd welcomed into our family dismiss my grandson as baggage. But that was just the beginning. Over the next 3 days, I watched the footage every night. I documented everything. Jennifer on the phone with someone named Rick, clearly her bookie or loan shark. Jennifer forging what looked like therapy invoices on her laptop. Jennifer screaming at Tommy when he spilled juice, calling him useless and a burden I never wanted. On Friday afternoon, the footage showed Jennifer and Tommy leaving the house at noon. The timestamp showed they were gone for 6 hours. They returned at 6 p.m. Tommy went straight to his room, his face pale. Jennifer was energized, almost manic. She'd clearly been gambling again. I called Martin. "I have evidence. Video and audio. It's bad. Bring everything to my office tomorrow. We'll go through it together, and then we need to bring David in. This can't wait any longer." Saturday morning, I sat in Martin's office and showed him everything. Every phone call about debts, every moment of Jennifer calling Tommy names, every second of her forging documents. Martin's face grew darker with each clip. "Eleanor, this is elder abuse of a disabled dependent. This is embezzlement. This is fraud. We need to go to the police and to David, today." "Will David believe us?" "He'll have to. The evidence is incontrovertible." I called David. "Honey, I need you to come to Martin Ashford's office. Immediately. Don't tell Jennifer where you're going. This is about Tommy." My son's voice shifted from confusion to alarm. "Is Tommy okay? Is he hurt?" "He's physically safe. But David, please. Come now. Come alone." An hour later, David sat in Martin's office, his face ashen, as we showed him everything. Every video clip, every forged invoice, every cruel word Jennifer had said to his son. The casino trips, the gambling debts, the stolen money. When the last clip ended, David sat in silence for a full minute. Then he said, very quietly, $147,000? From Tommy's trust, Martin confirmed. Meant for his care, his future. "How long has this been happening?" "About 18 months, based on the financial records." David's hands were clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. "And Tommy? How long has she been treating him like that?" "I don't know for certain," I said gently. "But he told me she's been threatening him, telling him he's a burden, that we don't really want him." Something broke in my son's face. "I need to go home. I need to get my son." "David, wait," Martin said. "We need to handle this correctly. I've already contacted the district attorney's office and Adult Protective Services. They want to interview you and Eleanor on Monday. In the meantime, I recommend you remove Tommy from the house, but you need to be strategic about this." "Strategic? She's been abusing my child." "I know, and she's going to face consequences. But if you confront her now, she could destroy evidence, claim you're manipulating Tommy, make this much harder to prosecute. Take Tommy somewhere safe. Tell Jennifer it's a father-son weekend. Document everything. On Monday, we bring the hammer down." David's jaw worked. Finally, he nodded. "Okay, I'll take Tommy to my brother's place in Seattle. Just for the weekend, I'll tell her." "What about Jennifer?" I asked. "What about her?" David's voice was cold. "As far as I'm concerned, I'm married to a stranger who's been torturing my son and stealing his future." That evening, David picked up Tommy, telling Jennifer they were going on a surprise trip to see Uncle Mike. Jennifer barely looked up from her phone. "Fine. I have plans anyway." Once they were gone, I went home and waited. The next 48 hours were the longest of my life. I wanted to march over there and tell Jennifer exactly what I thought of her. But I waited. For Tommy. For David. For justice. Monday morning, David, Martin, and I met with ADA Patricia Morrison and a detective from the Financial Crimes Unit. We presented everything: the videos, the audio, the financial records, Tommy's statement that Martin had carefully documented with a child forensic interviewer. Patricia Morrison was a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes. She watched every clip without expression. When we finished, she said, "This is one of the clearer cases of dependent abuse and financial exploitation I've seen. We'll issue a warrant for Jennifer Hayes' arrest this afternoon. Detective, please coordinate with the bank to freeze any remaining trust funds and any accounts in Mrs. Hayes' name." "What happens to Tommy?" I asked. "David has full custody as the biological parent. We'll recommend supervised visits only for the mother, pending trial. Child Services will do a follow-up evaluation, but based on what I'm seeing, Tommy's placement with his father is appropriate." "And the criminal charges?" "Theft in the first degree, criminal mistreatment in the first degree, forgery, and fraudulent use of a credit card. She's looking at significant prison time if convicted." That afternoon, I was at David's house when the police arrived. David had come home with Tommy, ready to have the conversation with Jennifer. But he didn't have to. The officers arrested her in the driveway. I'll never forget the look on her face when she saw me standing in the doorway. Pure hatred. She screamed, "You did this! You bitter old woman! You couldn't stand that David chose me over you!" I didn't respond. I just held Tommy's hand as they put handcuffs on his mother and read her rights. That was 8 months ago. Jennifer was indicted on all charges. Her trial is next month. David filed for divorce immediately, and it was finalized 3 months ago. Jennifer's attorney tried to claim she had gambling addiction and deserved treatment, not prison. The prosecutor argued that she'd made calculated choices to defraud a disabled child and emotionally abuse him for over a year. The investigation revealed even more than we'd initially known. Jennifer had also opened credit cards in Tommy's name, running up $20,000 in debt. She'd cashed in some of Robert's life insurance policy that was meant for Tommy's education. In total, she'd stolen or misdirected nearly $200,000. She'd also been having an affair with Rick, her former boyfriend from college. He was the one she'd been paying off. He had gambling debts of his own, and she'd been funneling money to him, thinking he'd marry her once she divorced David. Rick, by the way, was arrested for his role in the scheme. He'd helped her forge some of the documents. As for Tommy, he's in therapy. A good therapist who specializes in autism and trauma. It's been hard for him. He feels guilty, like he should have told someone sooner. I remind him every day that none of this was his fault, that he was being threatened and manipulated, that he's brave and strong and so loved. David moved Tommy out of that house. Too many bad memories. They're renting a place closer to me now. I see them almost every day. Tommy is slowly coming back to himself. Last week, he spent an hour telling me about newly discovered exoplanets, his eyes bright with excitement. David is struggling. He's in therapy too. He blames himself for not seeing what was happening, for working too much, for trusting Jennifer. I tell him what the therapist told him. Jennifer is a master manipulator. She showed everyone exactly what they wanted to see. Even me. I'd liked her. I'd trusted her with my grandson. The trust fund that's left, about $150,000, has been moved to a new trust with me as trustee. David is the contingent trustee. No one person has unilateral control anymore. Every disbursement requires 2 signatures. We've also filed a civil suit against Jennifer to recover the stolen funds, though the attorney says we'll likely never see most of it. It was gambled away. I think a lot about the warning signs I missed. The expensive purchases I rationalized. The way Tommy changed, and I told myself it was just a phase. The questions Jennifer asked that made me uncomfortable, but I pushed aside. I should have acted sooner. I should have trusted my instincts. But I also know that the system is complicated, that proving financial abuse takes time and documentation, that if I'd gone to David with just suspicions, Jennifer could have talked her way out of it. She was that good at manipulation. The cameras were the key, hard evidence that couldn't be denied or explained away. Sometimes, Protecting the people you love means doing things you never imagined you'd have to do. Things that feel uncomfortable or invasive. But when someone is being hurt, when someone vulnerable is being exploited, you do what you must. People ask me if I'm angry. Of course I'm angry. I'm furious. This woman stole from a child. She emotionally abused a beautiful, sensitive boy who'd never hurt anyone. She lied to my son for years. She betrayed every trust we placed in her. But more than anger, I feel grateful. Grateful that I paid attention. Grateful that Tommy found the courage to tell me about the secrets. Grateful for Martin and Patricia Morrison and everyone who took this seriously. Grateful that Tommy is safe now, healing, surrounded by people who genuinely love him. I also feel a responsibility to share this story, because financial abuse of disabled dependents is more common than people realize. Caregivers, trustees, even family members can exploit vulnerable people. The statistics are horrifying. According to the National Adult Protective Services Association, financial exploitation affects 1 in 5 elderly or disabled Americans, 1 in 5. And children with disabilities are especially vulnerable. They're often told their burdens, that they should be grateful for care, that no one else will want them. They're taught not to question authority figures. They may have communication difficulties that make it hard to report abuse. If you're caring for someone with a disability, or if you have an aging parent, or if you're managing a trust for someone, please pay attention. Look for warning signs. Unexplained financial transactions, behavioral changes, fear around certain people, reluctance to talk about daily activities. Set up safeguards. Multiple trustees for financial accounts. Regular audits. Keep lines of communication open with the person being cared for. Create safe spaces for them to report concerns. And if you suspect something is wrong, investigate. Don't rationalize. Don't make excuses. Don't assume the best. Protect the vulnerable first and sort out misunderstandings later if that's what they turn out to be. Tommy asked me recently if he could call me his best friend. I cried. I told him absolutely he could. He said, "You believed me, Grandma. When I told you about the bad secrets, you believed me." "I'll always believe you," I told him. Always. That's the promise I made to him. The promise I hope anyone reading this will make to the vulnerable people in their lives. Believe them. Protect them, even when it's hard. Even when it means turning your life upside down. Even when it means confronting people you once trusted. I sleep well at night now. Not perfectly. I still have moments where I wonder what would have happened if Tommy hadn't found the courage to tell me, if I hadn't installed those cameras, if I'd let more time pass. But I did act. Tommy is safe. Justice is being served. Jennifer's trial starts in 3 weeks. I'll be there. David will be there. We'll face her in court and we'll tell the truth about what she did. And then, hopefully, we can all move forward. For now, Tommy is thriving. He's back to his old self, telling me long, detailed stories about science and space. He's sleeping better. He's gained back the weight he lost. He smiles more. He's just a kid again, instead of a kid carrying terrible secrets. And that's worth everything. Every uncomfortable moment, every difficult decision, every hard conversation. Because at the end of the day, protecting the people you love isn't always comfortable or easy, but it's always right.